Sophie. Good evening.
So for everybody that might be tuning in or watching, we're just doing a little bit of a Facebook Live tonight on our channel, on our Facebook channel. I'm here with Lisa from SARSAS. So if Lisa, you want to tell us a bit about SARSAS and who you are?
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the Training and Communication Manager at SARSAS, and I don't know if she's in shot, but this is Mumu, the cat. Please don't judge me for her name. She did have a serious name once, but like that's what happens with cats. The names change over time. Anyway,
Yeah, we're all about the pets.
I know. I work for SARSAS. Okay, sorry, Winnie, I might have to go. I work for SARSAS. She sounds very sad. We're a local rape crisis centre. We provide support to people who've experienced any sexual violence at any point in their lives across the whole of Avon and Somerset. So we have helplines, we've got e-support, live chat, and we do more face-to-face work as well, so counselling and support sessions and groups. But we also think a lot externally, thinking a bit more about how can we prevent sexual violence. So we're out in schools, we do training sessions, we go into workplaces, actually, we're a little bit like vampires. If you invite us in, we will come and give you training. And actually, that's probably where the similarities between us and vampires end, because no blood sucking and no looking really effortlessly stylish, just training people on healthy relationships.
Amazing, so much stuff. And if you're watching, you'll probably know about the Nelson Trust and know what we do. But my name's Sophie, and I work in our women's centres in Bridgewater and in Bristol. So I work on the partnerships and development team, and we work a lot with SARSAS. We do a lot of crossover work. We do some training together. So we thought it'd be nice to start a little Facebook Live series. So we're going to be delivering these at 6:30 every week, covering different topics, stuff that might be useful that you don't already know, answering some questions. So yeah, come back every week.
And if there's anything in particular you'd like us to cover, let us know. Pop it in the comments. When it's live, if you have questions, we're happy to answer them, but we'll be checking back. So this will stay on the Nelson Trust Facebook. So if you want to come back and put some questions that we can answer in the future, pop them on.
Yes.
And so today, we're looking a bit at jargon busting. We're looking at what services are available. And I think we were both really glad to talk about this, weren't we, Sophie? Because like every area has its own specialist language. If you go into a school, they have terms and phrases that I would know. If you go into the doctors, if you go into like a marketing or an accountancy firm, and I think support services are no different.
Definitely, yeah. We thought it'd be a great one to start off with, because even myself, with the terminology, sometimes all the different acronyms, it gets very confusing. So we thought it'd be good for everyone watching to sort of, if you're confused about what's what, who's where, hopefully we're going to answer some questions tonight.
We've got you. We've got your back.
We've got you
today.
Cool. So I've got a nice long list for us. We're going to kick off with ISVA.
ISVA. I love it. You said it like it's like a question in a quiz, like ISVA.
Yeah.
But I already know the answer to this, so it's not really a fair quiz. But ISVA is an independent sexual violence advisor. Some people have heard of IDVAs before, so that would be an independent domestic violence advisor. So it's a similar role. You might have also heard of like KIDSVAs or SIPSVAs, or there's a lot of like permutation.
I mean, there's a lot.
But in this context, we're looking at support staff who help people who are going through the criminal justice process. And that could be any point within that process. They could be thinking of reporting some form of sexual violence. They could have reported already. They could be going at any stage. We're really lucky to have some ISVAs based in SafeLink, and that's based in Bristol, but they work across the whole of Avon and Somerset. They work with men, women, children, and their base is Bristol, but they work out of offices throughout the area. If you're going through the reporting process, you should be offered one whilst you're going through that process. But if at any point you don't have one, you haven't been offered one, or maybe it's just dropped off your radar because there's lots of people that to call and lots of information that you're given, you can go and put yourself into that service at any time. And But what's really amazing about them is they're completely independent of the criminal justice system. So their whole reason for being is to think about your well-being and what you need. So they can put things in place like special measures. They can talk to you about the process. I think they used to be able to. I don't know if post-COVID they still can, but they used to be able to go and do court visits. So yeah, very useful people to know.
Yeah. And I think you might have mentioned that, but if someone wanted to get in contact with an ISFA, how's best for them to do that?
I would recommend going to the SafeLink website. And if you are going through a process and you've got police officers that are looking after your case, they'll also know about the ISFAs and help out with that.
Fab. Hopefully that helps. First one, tick. One down. Next on the list, we've got SARC.
SARC. I like this list. This is a list of things I know.
Perfect.
So that is a sexual assault referral centre. A sexual assault, they are sexual assault referral centres, SARCs, across the land. Wherever in the country you live, you should be able to access a SARC. Ours is based in Bristol. This might become a theme. Unfortunately, that means it's quite a large area for one SARC to cover. And it means for some people who are further away. So, you know, if you're all the way down in Crewkerne, that's quite far away and transport systems aren't always great. But that's kind of where we're at the moment. So the SARC is where people go if something has happened, some form of sexual violence has happened in the last few days. So 7 to 8 days, I think, is their main time frame. But they have different time frames for different offences. So it is worth looking at their website if you want more information. Our local SARC is called The Bridge. And if something has happened recently, that's the place to go and get your DNA evidence collected. So they can do DNA swabs, they can do it internally, externally, they can take blood and urine samples to evidence, you know, if someone's been drinking or they've been spiked, things that might inhibit their ability to consent to something. They can also take a log of any injury, so you're evidencing what's occurred. They can do anonymous reporting. Also, the ISFAs can do anonymous reporting. Got that part. So they've got like a whole range of support they can put in place. Also, they have crisis workers who are there to support anyone who goes through that whole process, which is really important. Big fact is you can go if you're reporting. The police will take you there. It's a 24-hour service. They can open up the examination suite. If you're not reporting, you can still go, but you would have to get yourself there, and the hours are different. It's 8 till 8. But what's really, I think, a really key piece of information that people might be surprised by is that they can keep that evidence on ice for up to 2 years.
Wow. I didn't know that.
No, right. So if someone's not sure what they want to do, because reporting won't necessarily always be the right journey for people, or it also might not be the right time. So it's nice to have those options and have those choices.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's just good to have it all there. And then, you know, you can sit on it for a bit, decide what you want to do, but at least you've been and you've got it all sorted. So if and when you do want to report, you've got all the evidence there that you need.
Completely.
That's very good to know. I didn't know that.
Well, it is worth noting, even if you don't go and get DNA evidence, it's not the be all and end all. It doesn't mean you can't go forward to report. And none of these things mean you can't access support what is available no matter what reporting choices you make. Yeah,
definitely. Fab. That's a good one to know. And again, with all of these, if you Google the terminology, Google the acronym, they're all going to come up as well. So if you forget what we've said, have a type in.
If you forget what we said, there's one thing to remember. Google. No, I'm joking. So if you forget what we're saying, there's one thing to remember, and that is the survivor pathway. That is the referral pathway website for the whole of the Southwest. So if you're anywhere in the Southwest, you need some information about a sexual violence support service, go www.survivorpathway.org. Check that, and we'll put it in the description. And that has all of the information of all of the local services, and we keep that up to date regularly, which is quite a task. It's a massive website, but it's checked annually, so that's where to go.
Up to date information and services. Fab. Next on the list we've got, so I'll read out that it's VAWG.
VAWG.
VAWG, yeah, I was thinking, how am I going to pronounce that one? So this has been like a hot topic in the news for a long time now, well, for last year or so. So people have probably seen it flashing up everywhere, but might not quite know what it is.
It sounds like some sort of Star Trek term. When you like think about it with fresh eyes, isn't it? Like, oh, Captain, the VAWG are hailing you.
Yeah.
No, I reveal that I'm a nerd. VAWG stands for Violence Against Women and Girls, and it's a kind of an umbrella term or a descriptive term that tends to get used in political circles, like for policy documents or legislation. So when governments or councils are kind of putting out bids for services like ours to kind of bid for money to provide support services, they'll often be under the heading of VAWG.
Yeah.
We love acronyms. They're not necessarily beautiful acronyms, but they do.
No, it's
them.
not the nicest of ones to say, is it? But there it is. Good one to remember. Next, we've got these. I'll do these two together because they kind of go maybe hand in hand, depending on what service you are. We've got referral and assessment.
That's really handy. And those feel like such worker language, don't they? And
yes,
I like what we're talking about, because before I worked in the sports sector, I didn't, and the services, I didn't work in this area at all. I worked in higher education. I remember starting and boss and going, what's our referral pathways? I've got no idea. I don't know what referral
I don't know what that word means.
I just don't think it's one we use in everyday language that much. I mean, it's a really simple one, referral. It just means to signpost, to kind of send someone into service. So if you're, for example, a GP says, oh, I'm going to do a referral for you to SARSAS, that means they're going to be filling out a form with your details with you to send to us, for us to then contact you.
Definitely. And also with that one as well, self-referral. So you can, quite a lot of services you can self-refer to as well. So for instance, for us, our women's centres, you can come in, the same thing, you're going to be filling out a form, but it's, you know, something that you've come to do yourself as opposed to a professional doing it for you.
Like, what would be more normal language for us to use for that? Self-referral. They're like, access? I don't know. I'm sure there's like a much more normal word we could all be using.
Yeah.
I think what it is, I've worked here too long.
Too many words. And then, with that, we've got assessment.
Assessment is, again, one of those other terms which feels horrible, because for most people outside of support services, an assessment sounds like a test or something.
Quite a clinical word as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not like it's not a very warming or friendly word, considering the nature of what we do, which is really welcoming and friendly. An assessment is when someone comes into a service like ours or yours, and they want to get some support, but it's about meeting with a worker to figure out what support would be best for you, what works for you, what you're interested in. So I can't speak to all services, but I can say when someone comes into SARSAS, they would sit down, we would chat about things like your well-being, if there's anything we need to know that would impact on the support we might give you. What are some of the outcomes you want? So what would you like to achieve in the support? What are you working towards? What I think sometimes people think we are going to do, I guess there are two main fears. One, that we're going to make you tell us everything that's happened in detail. That will never happen. You only have to tell us what you're comfortable telling us. We're not going to, I think it would be really irresponsible of us to get people in and say, right, open up all your trauma to us. Tell us all the awful things, and then we will see you again in however long it takes for the counselling to be available, the support work to be available. That wouldn't be fair. We want to keep people safe, and so that's not really how we work. And I think the other thing that worries people is that I'll come in and they will say, actually, you're not traumatized enough, so we have no service.
It's that sort of fear of coming in. Oh, why have I gone dark?
That's big.
Got light sensors in here, who knew? Sorry. So yeah, it's sort of that fear of coming in and then fearing that someone's going to turn around to you and say, no, sorry, you know, it's not, which isn't the case at all. And it's not for us either. So
yeah, and you're coping too well. You're okay. You don't need it.
Yeah.
We won't make you pay for your support with pain coins. You don't need to evidence to us that you've had a hard enough time to get support. Everybody deserves support. So I think it's nice to be able to kind of like bust some potential myths around that.
Yeah, definitely. It's about the exploring sort of what needs you have that aren't being met and how we can help meet them, as opposed to assessing how. Yeah, I can't words.
That's a really good way of putting it. That's it, exactly.
Yeah. Fab. Next we've got recent and non-recent, and I'm actually not too sure on this one, so I'm intrigued.
Again, it's very like jargony language, isn't it? So when people come into service, if someone's experienced sexual violence, we use the term recent to describe, in counselling terms, it would be something that's happened within the last year, and non-recent would be after. Why we use those, to be honest, there's not a great reason. I think a lot of those definitions come from funders. So we will have different money for different services linked to different timeframes.
Yeah.
So that's all behind the scenes stuff. It doesn't really matter for the person on that end getting support.
It might be something that you hear and wonder. Sort of.
But it's got a slightly different definition when you're looking at the police and you're looking at the SARSAS. So that recent would be about 7 to 8 days, and non-recent would be after, and that's about gathering evidence.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Quite self-explanatory, I guess, but if you sort of hear it in a conversation where you're not expecting it, then I can imagine it's a bit like, ooh.
Yeah, and it's so like, it's not very specific, is it? It could be like recent, not non-recent. Well, you know, if something happened 50 years ago, to me, it might still feel really recent. I might still be in trauma, but also, well, what's recent then? Was recent like 5 years after? Because that's 50 years after. It's quite indistinct.
Yes, yeah, definitely. The next one on the list is
I'm aware of checking if anyone has questions, because people might be.
I have got the chat up and I can't currently see any in there if I'm looking at the right thing. So yeah, if anyone is watching, please feel free to pop questions in the chat and we can answer them as we go about any of the terminology or sort of any other questions you might have. Cool. Our next one is, I think this is a really good one. I think it's counselling, which everyone I think knows the word, sort of knows what it is, but it can have negative connotations, can't it?
Totally. And
people are a bit scared of it.
And what I find really interesting is something I find quite fun is like when I'm watching telly or films is spotting counselling and spotting how it's portrayed, because it's really interesting. Sometimes it's portrayed as being like lying down on the couch, like very Freudian, with someone like scribbling notes. Sometimes you see counsellors like kind of telling people how to live their lives. So it's really interesting. Or like counsellors,
everyone's in tears, floods of tears, tissues flying everywhere.
And that's not how it works. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of tears, but it's really interesting. So also, I think we're often told that counselling is the answer to all the things, and actually it's not always the right thing at the right time for everybody. So but I think it's kind of what we all have in mind when someone says, oh, you need some support, counselling. It's interesting because there are so many different types of counselling.
So many, I
think what might be useful is the things it definitely is and things it definitely isn't might be quite useful. So when someone comes in for counselling, they will have one of those assessments that we talked about. They will have a counsellor who they meet usually weekly, usually for 50 minutes. They're not going to be calling you, they're not going to be turning up at your house like they might do in the films dramatically. It's usually a set amount of sessions. It doesn't usually go on forever and ever and ever. Other things it's very boundaried. Your counsellor won't be telling you what to do or what to think, and they won't be kind of impressing all of their thoughts on you. It
Yeah.
will be led by you. You're in charge of it. Also, especially what we do often at SARSAS is what's called person-centered.
Yeah.
So the idea of that type of counselling is that you are in charge. They won't say, you won't come in on that first day and they'll say, so tell me about your relationship with your mother.
Yeah. Which is what I think everyone thinks it's going to be as soon as you walk in the door.
Yeah. It's more about kind of empowerment. It's about giving you the space to talk about what you want and need to talk about. It's about letting you direct it, and it's about kind of working with you to build the tools that you need to kind of move to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's very what you want it to be, isn't it? It can be sort of what you make of it.
Yeah.
Depending on what you want to talk about, how much or little you put into it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It is work, which I think people, I mean, that definitely surprised me, because as part of my work, I have to go to clinical supervision, and those sessions are tiring because you have to prepare and you think about what you want to talk about so you can get the best out of it, and then you reflect on what they told you, and sometimes it's very emotional, so kind of it can be a bit tiring. But
it's a process, isn't it? It's not like a turn up and someone's going to tell you, okay, you need to do this, that, and the other. It's a very like together, working together, very whole process, whole journey, isn't it?
Yeah. And what's really lovely is like some of those things that you learn in counselling, you will keep with you for the rest of your life. They will be light bulb moments and epiphanies and tools that will kind of, they won't change you as a person, but there'll be things that maybe, I mean, there are definitely new ways of thinking that you might develop when you go there.
And I think there's that thing with like counselling / and/or therapy. I might be getting them mixed up, but you don't necessarily always have to go if you've got, you can just go for anything. It's not one of those things that it's like you have to be a certain amount of this has gone wrong or this has happened. You could just go if you fancy going and chatting through some stuff for anything. So
I always feel like everyone could do with like a little NHS allotted therapy session.
I think so. Yeah.
Think about to reflect on why we do things and why we react in certain ways. Things is very helpful.
Learning, isn't it? Learning about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't really
hopefully we've
manual.
Yeah, hopefully we've made that a bit less scary for people that might have been a bit weary of it. So, and you touched on this one a minute ago, the person-centered term.
Yeah. Oh, so person-centered, pretty much just that. I think, now I'm not a counsellor or an expert, but some of the main tenets of it are that unconditional positive regard, which I love as a phrase. I didn't understand it and wouldn't have understood it until I worked here. But it's about someone someone's got your back. They're interested in you. They are there to support you. And it doesn't matter if you've done things that you're not proud of. You know, they're not going to turn away from you because of that. They're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And they're going to be congruent, which is another really counselling term, which I've got to be really honest. There were many times that I heard people say terms like incongruent and congruent. And for years, I had no idea what they meant. Eventually, I had to go and Google
Just nodding your head.
Really, it's about being honest with people, honest and transparent. So
definitely.
It's that. So whilst someone might not judge you for poor behaviour, they would be honest with you about. So I think that's a really good and safe thing to have, someone who respects you and has positive regard for you, but is also very honest with you, and that's a really good space for learning and growth, I think.
And growing, isn't it? Definitely. Next we've got psychodynamic.
Now, I'm not an expert in this by any stretch of the imagination, but psychodynamic, so those are sort of the two main counselling sort of terms you'll see usually when people describe what they do. Some counselling services will be mainly psychodynamic, some will be mainly person-centered, and some might do what we call a mixture of the two, where some of the people might use a bit of both, and they're called integrative. Psychodynamic, now, again, one to Google to get the full picture. The main differences are they're very interested in relationships, so they might want to pursue talking about how the relationships you have in your life affect the choices that you make and how you feel about things. They're also very interested in how the path you've been on, how your path and what you've experienced might affect your here and now. So they've kind of got a little bit more of a roadmap to follow potentially than a person-centered.
And where might you hear the term psychodynamic in counselling?
Counselling services. So some counselling services will be one, some will be the other, some might be a bit of both. And
okay.
counsellors will just have a whole metaphorical toolbox that come from all the different.
They pick different parts, the final one I've got on our list, it's a good one to end on, because the Nelson Trust is all around sort of the trauma-informed way of working, as will you guys be. So the last term we've got is trauma. How would you sum trauma?
So it's an interesting one, because I think we bandy the term around quite a lot in our services, and you'll hear it bandied about quite a lot in medical services. And I think we're getting far more aware of trauma and emotional impacts of trauma. I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you mentioned trauma to someone, they would expect it to be kind of blunt force trauma, like physical trauma. So trauma can be something that you've experienced. It's a physical attack or accident or injury, but it can also be psychological and emotional trauma, losing of a child, an abusive relationship. And it's something that overwhelms you. It impacts on your ability to cope. Potentially, you could feel that there is a threat to your life or your physical being, or you can see that happening to others. So other people's trauma and pain can contribute to your own trauma as well. Is that kind of how your understanding of it as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's a big word, isn't it? It's technically a small word, but it covers so much, doesn't it? And it's a whole, it can cover a whole array of things, and it's different. Everyone's trauma's different. It's different for everybody. It's not one term fits all, one shoe fits all.
No, but I think it's really good to kind of shine a light on some of these medical terms, because sometimes it can really feel like someone's being pathologized, a word I've seen written down many times but not said many times. But it can feel like people are explaining away situations with medical terms. But it's also really nice for us to have them in our own toolkit when we're trying to access services, and to be able to describe how we're feeling about things or what we've experienced. So I think trauma is a really accurate description for sexual violence and the effects of it on somebody, both physical, emotional, psychological. There we go. I knew there was another word.
And like you said, it's one of those things that really does affect your sort of your emotional health and well-being, and physical, and it affects your everyday, not always your everyday, but comes into play a lot. So.
And it's nice to kind of talk about, because it's one of those words that maybe some people use kind of flippantly, like, oh, I was traumatized, or by like, oh no, I went to Greg's and they didn't have any more sausage rolls. I'm traumatized, or I smashed my phone, or I was traumatized.
It's not a light word.
That's like how people have like misappropriated word triggered. You're like, oh, these are words that are very serious.
That have a lot of meaning. I have a lot of meaning for a lot of people. So it's don't want to play them down.
Exactly.
Cool. That's all the words we had on our list. I'm sure there's a million others, but there's only so much we can fit in our brains at once. So I think we'll leave our list there today.
I think we covered a lot though. And if people have other words, we're more than happy to repeat some other kind of jargon thing.
We can do another session. Or put them in like the comments section. We can gather a list, do another session, or we can reply. But hopefully I think these Facebook Lives are just going to be about raising a bit of awareness, covering some topics that people might be interested in, doing a bit of learning. So hopefully,
and I think
useful to someone out there today.
I think our next one is healthy relationships.
Healthy relationships next.
Same time, same place next week.
Same time, same place, 6:30, Nelson Trust Facebook page. We're going to do a bit of like, what is gaslighting, unhealthy and healthy relationships, love bombing. that sort of
Brilliant.
stuff. So
I think that'd be really useful. Well,
yeah.
it is always a pleasure.
Yeah, and you. Thanks for joining us, Lisa. It was good to see you.
And thanks for joining us, anyone who's watching.
Yeah, we don't have any comments, but yeah, if anyone is watching, then thank you very much. And yeah, see you next week. Bye.